Well, hi everyone, and thank you for joining our session. So my name is Brigita Seguis, and joining me today is my colleague Graeme Harrison. And in the next 45 minutes or so, we will be talking about measuring impact. So this is a brief overview of what we will cover today and how we're going to structure our session. So first of all, I'll give you an overview of what we mean by impact and why we think we should measure it. And then we will focus specifically on how we evaluate impact at Cambridge University Present Assessment. So we'll give you some examples of the kind of data that we collect, and also some very hands-on examples from the context where we actually conducted impact evaluation studies. So to begin with, let's demystify washback and impact. I'm sure some of you have heard these terms, and a lot of the times these terms are used interchangeably, but actually they do not mean exactly the same things. So I think this is a good starting point for us to draw the line between washback and impact. So when we talk about washback, sometimes it's called backwash as well, we are thinking about the effects of testing on teaching and learning. So this is how it's been defined in the assessment literature. It's very much the effect of a test on what happens in the classroom in terms of teaching and learning. So when we think about washback, we think about the so-called micro context. So on a smaller level, smaller scale. So it's either the classroom or the school. Now, when we talk about impact, we are thinking in much broader terms. So we are thinking about the effects and consequences that a test, a learning resource, or an educational intervention can have beyond the classroom. So we are moving away from that micro level to what we call a macro context. So we are thinking in terms of the society, community, or even country level. And as such, washback is a type of impact. So impact could also refer to those micro contexts, but it also encapsulates this much broader sphere of influence that an intervention can have. Now, there are different ways of thinking about impact, of defining impact, of classifying impact, and I've listed here some of the categories. So impact can be both positive and negative, and it can also be neutral. So sometimes if there is no impact, we say that, well, the impact was neutral. That's another way of classifying it. We can also think about intended impact and unintended impact. So normally the intended impact is something that we set out to achieve when we created a test or a learning resource. Unintended, it's something that happens that we did not anticipate, something that was completely unexpected. We can also think about direct and indirect impact. So direct impact is something that happens, very much in a linear fashion. So for example, a teacher decides to introduce a new teaching method in the classroom, right? So that could mean that learners' motivation increases because they like what the teacher is doing. So it helps them with their engagement. But it could also be indirect in the sense that, over a longer period of time, this can lead to things like, improved learner outcomes, right? So there are other elements involved in that, but also this new teaching method might have an indirect impact of what happens later on. So as such, we can also think about short-term impact. And I gave you an example of that just now, something that happens immediately, sort of the immediate cause and effect, or it can be long-term impact, so something that happens over a period of years sometimes. So I've given you a very brief introduction of what is impact, what is washback, about the different types of impact. And before I sort of go and give you the reasons of why we think we should measure impact of our learning materials and exams, we would like to hear from you. So why do you think it is important to measure impact of learning materials and exams? You could maybe think about your own context. It could be at any level, classroom, school. It could be at the country level, whatever comes to your mind. And we would encourage you to share this in the chat. If you have any ideas, why would you want to measure impact in your contexts? Any thoughts? No, maybe you don't. Maybe we haven't convinced you yet as to why it is important to measure impact, and then we should give you a bit more examples. In order to give feedback, thank you, Emily. Yes, that is a very good point. Yes, in order to give feedback. I'm assuming feedback to your learners. Yes, to adapt your teaching. That's a very good point. Yes, because if you measure impact, then you know what is happening, and then you know what you have to do in order to adapt your teaching and how to adapt it. Damien, to prioritize and update material accordingly. Yes, that is a very good point. And that's why we measure impact, actually. One of the key reasons why we measure impact, to make sure that our tests and learning materials do what they claim to do and be the best that they can be. Camelia, besides personalizing the teaching, it's a way to improve it. Yes, it's a very good point. Yes, it's good for teachers to know what works, what doesn't work, and to know the areas where they can improve. Teresa, to positively influence their effects on individuals. Yeah, that is a very good point. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, everyone. All very good reasons. Thank you for engaging with that. So I'll give you some examples from different contexts. A lot of it is based on the work that we did, but I tried to keep them sort of context agnostic for now, just to really focus on some key case studies. So example number one. So let's say we look at the impact of an exam within a certain context. So a new exam is introduced at the school level. An English language exam, of course, in our case. So what could be some of the positive impacts of this intervention? Well, an introduction of a new exam, of course, provided that it is a good exam, that measures all for skills, that it is aligned with the curriculum, that the teachers know what they're doing. It can really increase motivation and proficiency of learners. And it also allows for a closer relationship between learning and assessment, because learners have very transparent objectives that they're aiming to, that allows them to achieve very clear outcomes, because they do get a very clear score at the end of it. Now, in some cases, we have seen that an introduction of an exam can also have a very negative impact. So let's say if an exam only focuses on reading and listening, but doesn't have writing and speaking components, for example, this means that teachers will then teach to the test, and they will only focus on reading and listening skills, which in turn leads to the narrowing of the curriculum, because they are not focusing on speaking and writing skills as they should be, right? Because they have to be developing the four skills equally. And also, as a result, they might spend too much time practicing for the test, right? Instead of focusing on the context, they're just too engaged with the test itself. So these are some of the examples of positive and negative impacts of introducing a new exam. Now let's look at another example. And if you are following carefully, you know, I'm going from smaller to larger context. So let's look at impact within a policy context. So let's say we want to start using tests for employment purposes. So for example, you know, in some countries, teachers of English are required to have proof of their English language proficiency. And sometimes an external examination is used for that. Also in other contexts, such as healthcare, for example. So nurses and doctors who want to migrate and work in English-speaking countries have to have proof of their English language proficiency. So this is when an exam is used within a policy context. So what would be some of the positive impacts? Well, one of them is that by using an external examination, we are ensuring that fair and consistent assessment of candidates' language ability is taking place, because everyone is assessed against the same standard, right? Because we are using a standardized exam. And of course, by ensuring that, you know, everyone has the required level of English proficiency, so let's say it's B1 on the CFR, we are making sure that safety and quality standards are maintained. So in healthcare, for example, it's very important, but also for the teachers, right? If a new teacher comes, maybe, you know, moving in from abroad, and we don't really know what level they're at, it's good to know, to have that verified with an external examination. But some of the negative outcomes of that could be, well, if you think about the standard, right? So what if the standard is set too high? So what if all teachers are required to demonstrate C2 level? That's probably too high, because in some contexts, you know, B2 is enough, or C1 is enough, right? So if the standard is set too high, then obviously the negative impact of that is that a lot of highly qualified candidates are prevented from entering the workplace. On the flip side, if the impact is too low, then of course it has the positive effect, because employees who are not supposed to be there will get through the net, and you will have teachers or doctors with low levels of English. And my final example is from the area of social impact. So I'm very much thinking about broader society, you know, country level. So let's say we're introducing a program of bilingual education in public schools in a given country. So what could be some of the positive impacts of that? Well, it can definitely help with equity and inclusion because let's say, if we are using English plus another language education, right? So that education model is available to everyone, regardless of their income, their background, their socioeconomic status. And in the long term, it helps to ensure better language proficiency at country level. Now, what could be some of the negative impacts of that? Well, we have to think about the teachers. So let's say the teachers are required to teach in two languages. Then what about those who do not have that English language ability? And maybe they feel like it's too late for them to acquire that English language ability to a very high standard. What happens to them? What is the impact of them? And also, what about the students who, for whatever reason, choose do not to be enrolled in those bilingual schools? What does it mean to them? Like, how will they be perceived if they go through the monolingual model of education? So these are all the kinds of questions that need to be considered every time a new intervention, exam, learning material is introduced. And some of the caveats that I wanted to highlight are that cause and effect explanations are rarely adequate, because impact forms part of a very complex and dynamic system, and then there are many processes involved, there are many variables involved, and a lot of them are contextual, socio-demographic. So all of these things play a role. But we know that introduction of any initiative can have expected and unexpected consequences, and we have to be looking at them and thinking of them holistically. Now I'm going to move to talk specifically about the Cambridge approach and what we do at Cambridge and how we measure impact. Well, first of all, for us, it is extremely important to measure and report on our impact because we want to be aligned with the mission of our university, which is to contribute to society through the pursuit of education, learning, and research at the highest international levels of excellence. And the only way for us to know that we are doing that is if we gather evidence from the context in which we operate, evidence of the positive impact that we're making in the lives of our learners, teachers, and, as I said, wider society. Our intended impact is, of course, positive, and this is our mission statement. So we want all of our products and services to be designed to improve the lives of our learners, teachers, and wider society. So this is very much our starting point. And we operate under the model that is called impact by design. So what it means is that when we design and develop English language products and services, whether they're learning materials or they're exams, so we always think of them as products that will benefit our users. Once they are out there and once they're being used, so of course, we provide these services to different users within different contexts. And then when they're being used, we start doing case studies. So we're starting to collect evidence of the impact that they're having, focusing on both expected and unexpected consequences. And, we communicate that impact into the world. And when we see that, if we see that something is not working quite like it should do, then we go back to the design process and we tweak and we fix things that are not working, and we go through the same cycle again and again for as long as the products are being used. And our approach to impact evaluation is underpinned by the Cambridge English Impact Framework. It is available on our website if you're interested. And we try to keep it very simple. We structured it along the 3 domains, which are learning, teaching, and assessment. And here I have the examples of some of the things that we are focusing on in our framework. So some of the things that we look at when we evaluate impact. So if we are thinking about learning, of course, we are very much looking at learners' language proficiency and whether that has improved or not. We are also looking at life competencies, right? Because we try to embed as many life competencies as possible within our learning context so that our learners are not just learning English, but also picking up other skills like collaboration, communication skills, creativity, problem solving. So sometimes we may wish to investigate the impact of a course on the development of these life competencies. Of course, engagement and motivation are 2 very big areas for both learning materials and our exams. We want to make sure that our exams are motivational. So this is always something that we will ask our learners to report on, as well as teachers and parents. When it comes to teaching, of course, as you very correctly pointed out in the chat earlier, teaching methods and practices is a big area of impact because, of course, that has a big impact on the learner. So this is something that we will always look at. Teacher confidence is another example, an area. So how confident teachers feel in preparing learners for an exam, in teaching them 21st century skills. These are some of the areas that we also look at. And also teacher attitudes is another interesting area. So for example, if we are thinking about digital learning, right? So what are the attitudes of the teachers towards that? You know, how sold they are on the idea to teach using a digital English language course, because that can then have an impact of how they're doing in terms of their teaching practices. And the final area is assessment. So when we think about assessment, you know, of course, we are looking at the effects of assessment on language learning and development. So whether the test helps learners develop the right kinds of skills. Also learners' perceptions of assessment. So in the previous session, we talked a bit about anxiety, test anxiety. That's one of the areas that we also look at, because of course, everyone is a bit anxious when they go and take a test, but we don't want it to be overwhelming and affect learners' performance. And of course, motivational aspects of assessment is another key area. So hopefully that gives you a better idea of the kinds of things that we are interested in when it comes to evaluating impact. And very briefly, I'd like to mention the data sources that we use in our work. So quite often we conduct focus groups with teachers, with parents, with school coordinators, principals. It could also be interviews if it's one-on-one. We do a lot of classroom observations, so actually go and visit schools. We very much immerse ourselves in the context in which our products are used to really understand all the contextual and everyday realities of the settings. We also review existing documents and data. So for example, curricula, we might want to look how the exam or the learning materials, how they fit with the school curriculum or the national curriculum, you know, whichever it is. With younger learners in particular, we like to use drawings. So we might want to ask them to draw how they feel in their English class, because that allows us to see whether they are motivated, whether they have a positive or negative predisposition towards their English language classes. With slightly older learners, we might use diaries. So we ask them, you know, what they did, for example, to prepare for a specific exam. Surveys, that's a great and easy way to capture a lot of data that helps us to understand the impact of our products. And finally, exam scores where these are available. So this was very much an introduction as to why and how we measure impact. And I'm going to hand over to Graeme now, who will talk you through some very specific examples.
Thank you very much, Brigita. Excuse me, I've got a little bit of a cold, so if I start coughing, yeah, don't worry, I'll manage to get it back on track at some point. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to talk about a couple of examples of our impact evaluation work. So these are in-depth impact studies where we go into certain contexts and we collect a lot of data. We write reports and we also give recommendations to people who are using the tests, so institutions, or it could be, for example, a Minister of Education. So that's kind of the level of investigation that we do here. So next slide, Brigita. The first one I want to talk about is in the Universidad del Valle de Mexico, or UVM for short. And UVM is a large higher education supplier in Mexico. It's part of the Laureate group of universities. Laureate is a kind of big international private conglomerate of universities. They have different universities around the world. They have 32 campuses across all of Mexico. So you can imagine that they have quite a lot of students in those campuses. And they do degrees in everything from marketing to medicine. And a lot of those degrees have an element of English language to them as well. So they teach around, any given year, they have around 25,000 students learning English. So, you know, a really big English language teaching provider, and one that Cambridge has worked with for a number of years, supplying learning materials. Recently, UVM introduced what is called the flipped classroom approach to their. Can you go back, Brigita? Sorry. I don't want to unveil the next slide quite yet. they introduced the flipped classroom approach to teaching with their students. So this was something that we supported them with our learning materials and lesson plans with them. So we worked very closely in conjunction with them. And I just wanted to ask a question of the people in the meeting in this workshop, what you understand by the flipped classroom approach. So I don't know, maybe you've used it, maybe in your institutions it's used already, maybe not, maybe you've read about it, but can you put something in the chat as to what you understand the flipped classroom approach is? I'll just give you a few moments to think about it and then write your message in there. Be interesting to find out, because it varies a bit depending on the context, I think. Okay, Sabran says, where students become the teachers. That's interesting. Yeah, okay, I can see why you said that. And teachers become facilitators. That's certainly true. Blending of learning, that happens a lot. I agree. Switching roles. So teachers certainly have to change roles. Students work through materials on their own, and then we come back together for feedback with a question mark at the end. Yeah, that's right. So there's a lot of self-study involved in it. Oh, blimey, it's going too fast for me now. Everybody's contributing. So you let learners choose topics of learning for the class. I mean, that's an option, definitely. It ensures that students understand the teaching objectives. Well, I hope that would be true with any class, to be honest. Students having the opportunity to teach the class about a topic or in a specific language. Not usually. I mean, that could be part of it, but that's not the kind of model that I'm talking about, really. Splitting the teaching time, giving students a chance to research the content. That's kind of true, because there's a self-study part to it as well. All right, thank you very much for all of your answers. So we move on to the next slide, Brigita. This is what the flipped classroom means in the context of UVM. As I say, it varies a little bit depending on the institution that implements it. So there's a large part of guided self-study. So students really have to take responsibility for their own learning. And in many cases these days, that's done online. So language content, so grammar, vocabulary, and structured practice. So those exercises that teachers are very fond of giving out, filling in gaps and that kind of thing, to practice grammar points, for example, that kind of stuff is done online. So students would have an idea about topic and the vocabulary associated with the topic and the grammar associated with that topic as well, before they came to the class. So they would spend some time preparing it, and then they would come into the teacher-led classes, and the focus in UVM, the focus in the teacher-led classes on communication, particularly in speaking. So UVM had really two kind of, I guess, overarching goals for the introduction of the flipped classroom approach. And one of those was to make their students better speakers of English. So they found that a lot of their students, even though they studied English for a number of years, they really didn't achieve very much in terms of speaking skills. So they wanted to shift the focus onto speaking. So that was one of the reasons. And the other one, which I think is a kind of byproduct of the flipped classroom, and it's kind of something which is really, generally speaking, useful for students in other subjects as well as English, is to become more independent learners. So taking responsibility for their own learning, which they have to do here in the guided self-study part of the flipped classroom approach. Next slide, please. Okay, so after UVM used the flipped classroom approach for just over a year, we got in contact with them and asked them if they would be interested in us evaluating what they've been doing. And of course, they really wanted to find out, if what they were doing had been successful or not. Because of money spent on these things. As a private university, they have to account for budgets, etc. So was it being effective? So we went in and evaluated the impact, and we looked particularly at how the flipped classroom approach had affected engagement with teaching and learning. So were students engaged in what they were doing? and how it had affected English teaching and learning practices, particularly the communicative side of things. And we did that through some of the ways that Brigita's already mentioned. So we did questionnaires or surveys, we did focus group interviews, and we did classroom or lesson observations. We went into the classes and watched the teaching. We had quite a lot, because it's a big university, we could get quite a lot of participants. We had almost 4,000 students who answered our questionnaire, over 200 teachers and 27 of the coordinators in the different campuses around Mexico. Next slide, please. And what did we find out? Well, we found out a number of very positive things. So talking about engagement, learners reported and teachers reported as well that the topics were in the learning material were interesting and engaging. And there was also some data which indicated that students were becoming more independent learners, and we'll come on to that in a few minutes as one of the other takeaways. But the first takeaway really was not so positive, but interesting nonetheless, was that 36% of the students were spending less than the recommended 2 hours on online self-study. So they'd been given this online self-study that they had to do, but over a third of them were not completing it. And obviously that has repercussions for the face-to-face classes, the teacher-led classes as well, because if you've got a third of the students who are not preparing properly for the classes, it means that teachers are limited in what they can do. They probably have to spend time explaining grammar, etc. So, you know, it's a really key part of the flipped classroom approach, that students do take the time to do the preparation for the classes. So we suggested that there needs to be a little bit more focus on student induction training. So right at the beginning, students need to know a number of things. Certainly, one of the things that came up was that students were struggling with the platform. So, you know, how to use the platform is certainly a key thing. They need to understand what the demands of the course are and what the flipped classroom approach is. So, you know, they need to know that they have to do these 2 hours of online self-study and why they have to do it. And they also have to understand that the classroom is the place for doing those speaking activities. And we also suggested that students be coached a little bit in independent learning, because we think that a lot of them are coming straight from secondary school where they haven't been independent learners. And they're being asked to do something which is completely different from what they've done previously. So we think they probably need to develop those skills. So we suggest in the induction training some coaching along those lines. Next slide, please. And linked to that is our second takeaway. So we found that quite a few students, as I said, are finding it difficult to adapt to the flipped classroom approach. They are often, certainly the weaker students, often would fall behind and become demotivated. And they would get into this kind of spiral of demotivation. So they would fall behind, become demotivated, so they wouldn't study, they would fall further behind, become more demotivated, etc., etc. And I think often it was because they were slightly weaker students and they didn't really understand what they were supposed to be doing in terms of the flipped classroom approach. So we suggested that in the first term, UVM introduces an initial slower speed of teaching and learning. So cut back on the learning objectives so that students don't have to achieve so much in that first term, and that they can adapt a little bit more to the FCA and just take a deep breath as well. And I think that was the case for the teachers as well, because when we went in to observe the lessons, we often saw that the teachers were really kind of rushing through the material that they had, you know, which you know, meant that the students couldn't really engage with it as fully as they would like, and you could see that some of the students were a little bit frustrated with it. So, you know, slowing things down a bit for the first term at least could certainly improve the experience and, in the longer term, the achievement of the students. Next slide, please. So as I said at the beginning, so the FCA, the flipped classroom approach, we did find some data which suggested that it encouraged students to become independent learners, which was really great news, because in a number of academic studies, learner independence correlates very strongly with achievement. And teachers there's a couple of quotes there. Teachers said that they think they became more responsible and more aware of their development, which is great. And the teachers as well said that they understood what we have to do is let them see why it's important to be more independent. So teachers understood their role as encouraging this learner independence. And these two quotes were just examples. There were quite a few other similar ones from teachers as well. So that was really good to hear that one of the goals, this learner independence, was being at least partially achieved. Next slide. Teachers also reported that they had seen gains in communicative skills. So they talked a little bit about how their students were, or many of the students had understood the idea of doing more speaking activities in class. And they talked as well about how English had really become the kind of dominant language of the classroom and interaction with the teacher as well. So that quote that's there from one of the teachers, I think, is really nice. I'll just read it out quickly. I think it's really working with our students. I'm able to see it every day when I'm talking to them or when they text me a message. So, you know, they're communicating even outside the classroom in English, and that's a really positive thing. However, when we observed lessons, we saw a bit of a mix. So we saw some of the teachers who were really embracing this FCA, and, you know, doing the communicative activities, but we also found some teachers who were kind of really teaching in a slightly more traditional way. They were doing grammar explanation, structured practice in the class as well, which is stuff that really should have been done outside the class. So I think there's a little bit of a piece here to do with educating the teachers. So professional development for teachers to teach them really the skills that they need for communicative language teaching. And the next slide, Brigita. And this really links into our fifth takeaway, was that teachers need to understand the FCA and how to implement it. So in some cases, as I said before, the practice of teaching hadn't really changed. And I think that's partly because there was they didn't really understand the FCA, the flipped classroom approach, the teaching philosophy. The idea, as somebody said in the chat, the idea that teachers need to be facilitators. They're taking a back seat. They're letting the students, take control much more. And again, I think this is down to a kind of teacher education piece. So they really need this kind of professional development into the flipped classroom approach, why it should work, how it should work, what's the philosophy behind it. So professional development in this area as well. Next slide, Brigita. So that was UVM. So that was a really interesting study. So we found lots of positive stuff, but also some things to improve, which was great as well, I think, because nothing's ever perfect when you implement it. There's always something you can make better. So part of our role with evaluating, producing these reports is, as somebody said in Brigita's session list, in the chat, they sort of said, it's about improvement of the products, and I think that's true for these things as well. So first of all, secondly, I'd like to talk to you about something a little bit different from UVM. So we've gone from private higher education to primary school in the state education in Chantilly in France. And we implemented, along with the local government in Chantilly, our pre-A1 starters exam in the final, and preparation for it in the final grades of primary school in as I said, in Chantilly, France. It's a project that was funded by the city council, and it's been ongoing since 2018. And of course, a bit like UVM, they were very interested to find out what their money, or what impact the money that they'd been spending on the exams and on the preparation material, what impact it had been having. So we talked to them and went in and did an impact study to find this out. There were a number of research questions, 3 quite long ones there. I'll not read them out. You can have a look through. I'll just give you a moment to do that while I have a quick drink. So basically, did it improve educational outcomes for students? Did it help teachers to teach better? And did it lead to any improvements in the education system for English in Seongti? And we collected data through, all of these methods that Brigita's mentioned already. So we looked at exam results, we looked at student, teacher, parent surveys and interviews with some of the key stakeholders or informants, teachers, parents, school leaders, and local community leaders. Next slide, please. And what did we find out? Well, a number of very interesting things. So teachers and students both reported that they found the pre-A1 starters exam to be reassuring, confidence building, and motivating. Students specifically told us that they thought they could do well in the test, which reflected their confidence. And teachers and school leaders thought the tests were motivating for students. So I think they talked a little bit about the fact that nobody passes or fails these young learners exams, and everybody has a positive outcome. And that was a quote from a teacher there. It's an exam that will reassure them and allow them to gain confidence in learning English. So that was a really positive thing because, of course, confidence and motivation, as we mentioned before, are generally linked to higher achievement. Next slide. And we talked to the teachers as well about the preparation. So Fun for Starters was the course book that they used. And teachers were really positive about the course book. So 100% of them agreed that the students enjoyed it. They found it engaging. That they found the contents interesting. So the topics were good. And this led to, as I said before, this tends to lead to greater motivation, which is a positive thing. Next one. Teachers also said that they found it easy to teach with, and they thought it supported students learning well. It prepares students well for the exam, which was part of its purpose. And some school leaders and some parents also mentioned that it supported teachers who weren't necessarily English teachers. So they hadn't had any real English language teaching training, but the books were good for them because it was kind of set out what they would do so that they would teach at the right level using the right kind of activities. And that's what this quote here suggests as well. Next slide. However, on the negative side, and this I think is something that's not really within our control, we also found that a lot of the parents were not very impressed with, generally speaking, the state education in English in France. They talked about how it's not consistent or integrated. So students would go into secondary school, but they would start their English at zero. So it wasn't taken into account that all of the work that they'd done already. So, students are more likely to be demotivated because they were beginning English all over again. And this obviously, meant the parents weren't very happy with this, and they were considering private options, whether that's a private secondary school or perhaps a private language school in the evenings after school, so that students could keep up with their English level and weren't wasting all the time that they'd spent in primary school learning English. Okay, next slide. So in summary, we're talking about the Young Learners exams in Seongti. There's some really positive things, preparing for the YLE supports learning, confidence and engagement. Teachers found the book easy to use. However, there were some issues with the kind of the system of education, unfortunately, in France. But I think, as I said, that's not something that's really in our remit to change, but I think it's interesting to highlight it. So in summary, we have talked about what impact is and why measure it. Thank you very much, Brigita. And she talked you through the evaluation of our products on teachers and learners. And I've given you a couple of examples of our impact work, the flipped classroom and Young Learners exam and learning material for that. So that's the end of our presentation. I think we now have a little bit of time for questions. So if you would like to put your questions in the chat, then go for it and we'll do our best to answer.
Thank you, Graeme. I'm just looking at the questions and we already have some. and the Q&A box. So the first one is, how do you decide what impact data you want to collect and when? Shall we start with this one?
Yeah, sure.
Well, I'll start, and Graeme, you can continue. So one of the things we look at is obviously all the contextual factors. So we try and gather as much information about the context as possible before we begin the study. We work very closely with all the stakeholders involved, and so we conduct interviews with our key informants. So for example, for the Chantilly study, that's the most recent one that we've talked about, we talked to school principals to understand how English classes are implemented. We also read a lot what has been written in the press, for example, because some of the French newspapers have actually reported on this initiative. So we really try to immerse ourselves into what was already available. And then based on that, based on these conversations, we designed our research questions, so what it is that we wanted to investigate, what our stakeholders were interested in. And then we looked at, the different data sources that we could use in order to collect the data that we need to answer the questions. So, of course, we took into account the age of the students. So in the slide, you saw that they were in CM2, which is, I think, year 6 in the UK. So they were roughly 11 years old. So we did survey them, but obviously we had to be very mindful of their age. So we couldn't include long questions, and, we have to keep the survey fairly short. And we relied a lot on the data from the parents, the teachers, and school decision makers, because obviously they're older and they could give us a different perspective. And it was also good for us because we had their exam scores. So that was another good source of data that gave us some very good information. So I don't know, Graeme, if there's anything you want to add, or if not, there's one about flipped classroom, which
just to
will
say,
be
I
all
think
yours.
it's thanks. I think it's when you're collecting impact data, you're thinking about working backwards from the changes that you expect to see. So you're collecting data from people and in ways that will provide information about the changes that you expect. You have to collect it quite broadly because, of course, there's potential unintended impacts as well. But I think you kind of do that in a way, you kind of work backwards a little bit.
Yes, you sort of map it all out, activities,
yes.
outcomes, outputs, impacts, and you work from that, yes.
Mm.
Okay.
So there's a flipped classroom question there, Brigita, isn't there? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So,
shall I read it out? Can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it. So how can the flipped classroom model be adapted for different grade levels and implemented in schools? Well, I mean, the flipped classroom model generally works in its kind of more complete version. It works better with, adult or near adult learners because it requires that learner independence. So it requires students to be able to go and spend some time studying. But I think, you can introduce it even in primary school to an extent. So it depends on how you introduce it. It doesn't have to be completely black and white. And in fact, I would suggest that one of the ways to introduce it in any context is to kind of introduce it gradually. So you can begin by doing some of the lessons as being flipped classroom, where students have to go away and do a little bit of preparation for the class, do some exercises, learn about a topic, and then bring that into the class, and you do the speaking activities, particularly in the case of UVM, it was speaking, but I think that tends to be quite common actually, that in English language teaching that the classroom activities are communicative. So in primary school, for example, you might want to do that once every few weeks rather than every lesson. And just see how it goes. And it's introducing those younger learners to it more gradually so that they kind of start to understand what's required and start to develop, even at a young age, a little bit of learner independence. And, when you're talking to them at primary school, it's often good to mention it to the parents as well, of course, so that they understand what's going on too. So I think you can implement it at different levels, but I think you have to be a little bit careful and maybe implement it gradually in many situations.
Yeah, I think with this very much what you said, Graeme. Communicative activities lend themselves quite well to be done in the classroom. And one way, I guess, sort of a very quick way of implementing flipped classroom is if learners spend their homework, doing, for example, more reading activities and more sort of grammar activities and gap fills, for example. But when they come into the class, they do more pair work, more communication with the teacher, and maybe, you know, develop their listening skills. I think that that's a nice way of getting them used to this idea of a fluid classroom.
I think yeah, I totally agree, Brigita. And I think generally speaking, I think language teaching lends itself very well to the flipped classroom approach. So I think a lot of teachers who know about communicative language teaching already do that to an extent anyway. So for many people, it wouldn't be a huge change to move to a more flipped classroom approach.
Yes, and we have a comment in the chat from Haran. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Thank you very much. So introducing flipped classroom gradually is the key with early years. Yeah, definitely. For example, I use it for kindergarten students in Hong Kong, usually for selected segments in the lesson, for example, partner reading. Yeah, that is a great example, and it's nice to hear that someone is actually using it. And yeah, kindergarten, that is impressive. That's a good start. And hopefully that will set your learners up for success later on, because they will be used to sort of more independent kinds of learning. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, that's great.
Any other comments or experiences from your own contexts? I mean, feel free to type them in. Or as Rashid said, you know, unmute yourself and talk to us. Yeah, I think we have maybe, well, 2 minutes left or one before the next session.
So I don't think we're getting any other comments here. We'll give it a few moments, but if anybody else would like to say anything, then feel free. But if not, then I guess we'll move on in a minute. So you've got a very exciting session coming up next. I think I'm going to stick around to find out a little bit more about it. It's with Yassine, who you can see on screen there, and he's going to be diving into AI, which sounds great. So yes,
thank you, Graeme.
Yassine, hand it over to you.
Thank you so much.
Everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.